10 begins with breaking news.
Well, good evening and thanks so much for joining us. I'm Whitney Miller. Most people's power is back on tonight after a massive outage this afternoon. We later found out that was intentional to keep the grid from overloading. It's a story you first heard about on WWLTV.com. First, an update. Entergy's map is still showing about 8,000 outages in Jefferson Parish. There are only a few hundred left in New Orleans and Plaquemines Parish. Compare that to a few hours ago when almost 100,000 people in our area were in the dark and in the heat. Lily Cummings starts our coverage tonight with how people dealt with the outage.
On the last day of its 50th year, New Orleans Greek Fest went dark.
Definitely will be one for the record books, and it will make it extremely memorable. So we'll get through today, and later on we'll laugh about it and say, remember when.
For roughly 3 hours, the festival lost power. Most vendors were cash only, the gym had no lighting or air conditioning, and the band was forced to leave the stage and play acoustic. Folks were let in for free the remainder of the night.
How much money do you think that this outage is costing you?
That's hard to estimate because I work with the Baklava Sunday booth. We can't operate at all. Without the power, we have no soft serve ice cream.
Well, now my day is ruined.
Organizers say people began to leave after realizing the outage was widespread. Nearby in Lakeview, restaurants that would usually welcome a large Memorial Day weekend dinner crowd were closed. Entergy Louisiana and Entergy New Orleans attributed the outages to MISO, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. MISO oversees the power grid that stretches from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. According to Entergy, they were ordered by MISO to decrease usage to prevent a more extensive outage.
I wish it didn't happen, and I wish they would consider the people that they're affecting, not just us at Greek Fest.
Despite the challenges, some still found things to celebrate.
I think it's fun regardless. Obviously, we were excited to see the music, but just getting to spend time together and with our friends and getting to eat all the good food, I think that the day was still saved.
Happy Greek Fest.
In Gentilly, Lily Cummings, WWL Louisiana.
Got to look at the bright side there. Now, we asked Entergy how much notice it receives from MISO in these situations and why customers were not warned, but we did not get an answer just yet. The Sewerage and Water Board says the Carrollton Water Plant and its water treatment facilities were not impacted by the outage, but a few sewer pumping stations did have interruptions, and that crews are assessing sewer levels. We also got a statement from City Council President and Vice President J.P. Morrell and Helena Moreno. And as District 3 Public Service Commissioner Devontae Lewis, it says, in part, we are not only frustrated by the lack of timely notification to both the utility and regulators, and it appears that New Orleans bore the brunt of this forced outage. The public deserves clear answers regarding the reasons behind this incident and the failure to provide timely alerts, end quote there. Now, we are now joined by Commissioner Lewis. His district includes part of New Orleans and Jefferson Parish. Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Now, when is the last time that we saw an outage of this scale caused by a load shed?
Well, in this region, it's been about 20 years. However, in Shreveport, Bossier, and Houghton, Louisiana, we saw a very similar RTO known as the Southwest Power Pool have two outages in the month of April. So this has become 3 load shed events in the state of Louisiana over the last 2 months, which has not happened in over 20 years.
Oh, wow. And yeah, we're just days away from the start of hurricane season. So do you know if Entergy has any kind of legal obligation to alert the public when a load shed is coming? And if so, what is the lead time?
Well, as my investigation thus far has showed that MISO gave the utilities just around a 3 to 5 minute notice of a load shed. This is due to the fact that there was a scheduled outage of one of our generation facilities for routine maintenance, and another generation facility went down, leaving us with not enough generation to meet the demand that the grid was showing that it needed. And so because of the dire circumstances, it did not allow ample time for that. However, I think there's a lot more questions that need to be answered and a lot more things that we need to figure out that could have prevented significant power outages that Entergy and MISO need to be held accountable for.
Understood. Now, what actions, if any, can you take to make sure that the public is notified sooner next time?
Well, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to bring MISO before the City Council and the Louisiana Public Service Commission, along with Entergy New Orleans and Entergy Louisiana, as well as CLECO, to ask about this event. We have seen over decades that Entergy and some of our utilities have fought MISO in providing significant transmission upgrades that would have allowed for power from other neighboring states to flow into the state of Louisiana to prevent this outage. But there's also questions about the forecasting, predicting how much demand that we need. We know that some of the federal cuts from the Trump administration has affected utilities and our regional transmission organizations in being able to accurately predict weather patterns that would result in knowing how much demand is needed. So this is across the board investigation, from federal cuts to lack of support and investment in Entergy's territory, along with accountability for MISO about how they predict and forecast the load that is needed to serve the people of Louisiana.
All right, Mr. Lewis, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for answering those questions.